Well, good morning, everybody. So just to kind of quickly recap, last session, we kind of talked about the basics of Power BI structure, covered installing and the difference between Power BI desktop and Power BI online. And today we're going to go through uploading some content and start using the Power Query editor to start manipulating some data. And then we'll go from there and then kind of start adding some visualization around that. So I know last session asked about the bank accounts. Just curious if anybody thought of any ideas around the kind of data that you'd want to share, across the organization. Feel free to chime in, but and no worries if you don't. I'm just trying to get some files loaded up and be able to share with you. So any thoughts on bank accounts? What kind of information you might want to share?
I have to pull up.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I'm just trying to find where I saved mine. I'll have something to add in a minute.
No worries. While you're doing that, were you all able to kind of continue to log in the Power BI online service and kind of just working or take a look around that area? If you found any issues or have any questions around that?
I was able to log in, not having any problems logging in and get into the Power BI online services. To be honest, I've been spending the last homework trying just to try to remember what the switchology is and how to save things after a couple of tries, which was frustrating. I guess my question right now, because I'm just not remembering it. 14-hour day will do that to you. What is the relationship between desktop and online with Power BI? Because right now it's eluding me.
No worries. So the biggest difference is the Power BI desktop is essentially like Excel, like Word, PowerPoint. Right. It's a local app on your machine. So you can create all of your work there, but obviously nobody's going to be able to see that until you either share the information via, exporting it to a PDF, or publishing to the Power BI online platform.
Okay.
So the Power BI platform, it gives you a couple of things. One, it gives you your own workspace, similar to the desktop space, with some limited capabilities in that you don't necessarily get the kind of robust Power Query component in there, meaning you can't fully manipulate data in the online service. Okay. A lot of that either comes from the desktop version, or if there's a SQL database sitting somewhere, or like a more robust database platform, that's where a lot of that manipulation comes in.
Okay. Okay. So would it be fair to say that, well, I can do all of my heavy lifting in the desktop service. The online service would best be used, and forgive me if I'm using the wrong wording there, best be used or most optimally be used for edits and collaboration?
Yep. Yeah, that's probably the best way to think of it.
Okay. I was just trying to figure out what that relationship between the two was. I mean, the whole sharing portion makes sense for me for the 365, but I was wondering, what, besides the share thing, was there something, something heavy lifting we're doing in it? But it sounds like all that heavy lifting data gathering is done off the desktop. So, okay.
Right. Yeah. And
thank you.
And sure thing. And overall, what you might see is what Microsoft does is they might start with their products in, let's say, the on-prem or the local client version. So the Power BI desktop is a pretty robust tool to use. And then they'll start incorporating some of those features into their online version. So, and they would like to think they're pretty consistent with how they apply those changes or add those features. But tomorrow they could essentially add in the Power Query, like full feature into the online version. So it's continuously growing, essentially.
Okay.
So in the chat window, I added a zip file that Don provided. It's Northwoods data files, and they're essentially just associated with what you might have already been working with in terms of student information, faculty, training courses, just kind of an agenda related data set. If you can all download that and extract it.
Guys, this is the 7 tables from our Northwoods database, and the ERD is in there, and to kind of remind you how things are connected. They're all I did was select star from the table in Workbench, that you're all very familiar with, and you can click on, there's a little export button down there by the output window, and all you do is click on that and say CSV, and you can save off the results of your query. So this is basically an exact dump of all the data, what little there was, from our Northwoods example. So you'll see the exact same columns and rows of data, the same faculty names and student names and all that stuff that you've already seen before.
Yep. So once you get that downloaded and extracted, what I was trying to troubleshoot here was, we'll get to it here in a second, which is adding custom columns. But in either case, we'll get to that here in a second.
And sorry, Dan, did you say that's in the chat?
Yeah. Were you able to get that?
I'm not seeing it, but other people may be seeing it. I don't know.
I can see it in the chat, but I'm having
I don't see it.
permission issues. I can't save it.
Okay, no
I'll
worries.
email it as a backup here real quick.
Sure. While you do that, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to use another avenue to see if I can share that content. Let me know if the email piece works. Otherwise, I can see if there's a way that I can do that here.
Yeah, I'm trying to find an email that I've sent everybody that I could just reply all to quickly, and it's making it slower than just drafting a message to everybody.
I don't know if you can see my screen, everybody, but I am in the chat. I'm clicking the 3 dots, and then if you click on open file, are you able to do that?
Yeah, I can. So I click on it, and a dialog box pops up under Zoom. It doesn't look like my typical files explorer like it is on your screen.
Okay.
And it's trying to save under systems 32 as Northwoods data files, all files data type. And then I push save, and it says, you don't have permission to save in this location, contact the administrator.
Oh, I gotcha. If you have the ability to change it, point it to just some other location like documents, if you have that.
Well, I think it's trying to save like within the Zoom application,
Oh, gotcha.
because the dialog box that pops up for the system folder explorer doesn't look like mine. It looks like Zoom's GUI, if that makes sense.
Okay, gotcha. Let's see if we can get that email from Don.
Yeah, I just I hit send about 15 seconds ago, and I just added it to the classroom. So it's under data visualization, the data visualization module, and appears to be published and accessible in the Canvas classroom. So, Dan, I worked on, if we're, no, I don't want to drive yet. I worked up a couple of charts on that bank accounts data, thinking of, like you said, what would you want to tell maybe the board of directors, at the end of the month on that new account information.
Sure.
And I'm like it's like trying to walk through waist deep water, when you're trying to do something you can do in a tool that you're unfamiliar with. I think, Jim, was it you that used the term switchology?
Yeah.
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 This jet's got engines, that there's a start button.
Yep, exactly.
It's got
I'll get the
ailerons,
right
it's got
combination.
rudder. You're trying to figure out how everything works.
It's not like the movies where you suddenly know how to fly a plane.
Yeah, or like, like in Independence Day, where Jeff Goldblum suddenly knows how to hack into an alien mothership and upload a computer virus from a MacBook. I mean, that kind of, that's how I feel. But yeah, it's like walking through waist deep water. You know how to run, and on dry land, you're pretty quick at it. But trying to do the same visualizations and whatnot in Power BI that I know how to do in Excel, it's just a matter of learning the switchology. Which switch do I click? Which button do I click? Which menu has that option on it? And it's just a matter of familiarity.
Yeah, I would say that when I first started learning Power BI, I just downloaded the tool, just kind of a result of supporting, Microsoft services, and then kind of started playing around with it. Fortunately, it wasn't a heavy needed solution at the time, so I had the opportunity to kind of take some time to just mess around with it. But yeah, this is where people say, well, it's an over glorified Excel tool set, but it also isn't, in that, like, you're trying to relearn where everything is and how to apply based off of this specific environment, as opposed to what you might be familiar with. So it makes absolute sense.
Yeah. And Dan, I just saw your, so just so that everyone realizes, Dan did prompt me to get these files to you, but I was dorking around trying to get mobile hotspot reestablished on my Verizon account, and I didn't see it until just now. So apologies, and bear with us, but it's either in the Canvas classroom, or it should be in your email if you don't, but it's a zipped file, so some boundary protection folk or methodologies will block that, but you should be able to get it off the classroom.
And this is essentially kind of a real life scenario, actually, of at least what I've experienced in terms of getting data. Where's it coming from? How is it set up? And then, getting it loaded into the environment. I can't tell you how many times I run into situations where, well, I've got an Excel file. Where do I save it? Where do I place it? Having a deeper conversation around that is, well, where did that where did the data of that file come from anyway? Was
Yeah.
it from a system so we can bypass this whole experience? Or are you just kind of inputting that information manually? So,
Yeah, and you've already loaded these. You've already clicked on get data and loaded these CSVs into this project, but make sure everybody knows how to do that.
yeah, we're going to go through that process. I just want to make sure everybody's got the
Whoop.
those files.
Has anybody got the files into a directory they can work with? Paul, you got them?
Yeah.
Did you get it via email or the classroom?
I got him an email.
I uploaded the bank accounts one, but not the Northwoods yet. I'm working on it.
And while we're getting that all set up, one thing I wanted to point out, so we were working with a bank account piece, and what you might find is when you want to open up a previous report, in doing so, the recent information is listed here, like what you might find in Office products. But again, this is the way the file is going to be saved as a PBIX file. And that will kind of load up any previous content, any visuals that you may have previously had. One important piece that you may notice is after you create your reports, there's this publish component. And the question earlier was asked, what's the difference here? And we'll get to this piece after we create our reports, but ultimately is, let's say you publish your report once a month or every quarter. So you can go into the file, into your local file, work with whatever you need to, make any updates and changes, and then you publish that, and then it will automatically overwrite the previous environment. So there's certainly automated ways to do this, but some of the time it's you don't have to go through the effort of automating it. It's just, okay, we're going to do this once a quarter. Let's just go load up the file, make the changes, and then publish it. So that's, like I said, we'll get through that one here, but I just wanted to kind of talk about how these files are saved locally on your machine. And then I'll give it just another minute here before I start walking through loading up the course information data.
Okay, let me share my screen, Dan. I want to see if this phone works, and I spent half an hour doing this. I want credit. Let's see, share. I'm curious if this will rip my Zoom connection to pieces, or if my audio is okay and my screen sharing's all right. Is it coming up?
Yep.
Okay. So this is my, no offense to our Neanderthal predecessors, but this is my caveman attempt at an initial dashboard. So I put in a text box in the upper left-hand corner that is just text, just pure text. You click on it and you can see and this is where these things in the right, these filters and this format text box and the fields, that's where I look at it. And I know there's stuff I'm supposed to be able to do, but I'm really eager to see you walk through some of this stuff. So that was a text box in the upper left-hand corner. You're going to want to label any kind of a report. And then I thought the board, so I just play acting that this would be given to the board of directors. So I thought they might like to see the total of new accounts that were opened throughout our month of activity, April 2019. That's all we have data for. So we had this. This is a text box down here, but when you click in it, you can see that you can add a value, a calculated value within a text box, which I thought was pretty cool, and I just kind of stumbled into it. So it says, what would you like to calculate? And sure enough, I typed in, what is the count? And it kind of auto filled that in. The total number of rows in our bank accounts data file is the total number of accounts. It's one line per new account. So when it summed that up, came up with 712, which I believe meets a sanity test. And then this next text box, I thought they might like to see how much money was deposited into the bank. Let me cancel that out and click on that one. There you go. And that's also a calculated value here. This $6 million. And I said, what is the sum of the knowing the amount field is how much money was put into each new account. I typed that in, and it brought it up, auto filled it in for me, calculated it correctly. All I had to do was click on this dollar sign down here to format for currency, and it worked. And you see there's the normal formatting things along the top. You can bold, italic, and center and whatnot, normal formatting stuff. And then I dragged in a couple of visualizations, so that we see a proportion of the types of new accounts, checking and CD being the lion's share. And of course, you got this thing called a tooltip floating around. Anytime you point at a data series, you get this floating dialog box that you can format using the tooltip options. And so yeah, to format a visualization, I learned I had to Google, a professional Googler, that you click on the roller brush, and that's how you get to the stuff that formats the visualization, as opposed to the fields, the data series that the visualization is reflecting. And then I thought, yeah, they're going to want to know account types by branch, but what I really wanted to do was the opened by, which is like a teller or a customer service representative, by branch. So I kind of failed on that. But again, I don't know really intuitively. I haven't done this enough to know intuitively what field from your fields list over here goes in which dialog box down here in your visualization to get it to do what you want it to do, or what what you're visualizing in your head. Which I know for the configuration folks at CAE, I think it would be nice to know when you're designing something exactly what fields or whatever a guy like Hunter is using to do that kind of thing. That's where I got with that one. Oh, and a line chart with just like the amount of money being not a cumulative amount, that's 6 million, but this is every day, the amount for that day. So anyway, I did my homework, Dan.
No, very much appreciated. Yeah, absolutely. It's there's very different stories that you can tell with all the same kind of data, and through different visuals and however it may make sense. And there's a lot of capabilities to manipulate that. And then there's a lot of automated pieces around that, in terms of you click on that checkbox and suddenly the fields are populated for you. So kind of cool, but can be a little bit cumbersome as well too, if it's not the way that you want to have that displayed. So
Yeah, I like the text box. I didn't know that you could do that with the text box in Power BI.
Yeah, so if you guys want to use, just for grins, if you want to use Power BI for your final presentations, you can use a tab like you see in Dan sharing his screen now. In the bottom left hand corner, it says page 1. You could beg your pardon, you can add pages just like you would add worksheets in Excel. So and you can use a page to just be literally a text box that is bulletized, you know, a list of bullets just like PowerPoint, and you can you can insert an image on there if you want to use a picture or whatever. So you can use Power BI to tell the story and then have the live interactive data on its, you know, on different pages. So it to me it exceeds Excel, if in no other reason than for that. It's easier to work with kind of the data storytelling side of things, to me, more than Excel does.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna move along and start uploading some of the content here, and you're all more than welcome to follow along, and then we'll take a break. When we get back, we'll see if we can start manipulating some of that data. So to start with, opening up Power BI Desktop. At the start, it may pop up a window and ask if you just want to start loading, you know, some from a previous file, or if you want to get data. So there's that. But if you skip that piece, you find yourself at this window, just up top, the ribbon here, or in this section is where you can start to load that data. A couple of items that I'm going to start with is it gives you some quick shortcuts here where you can load from Excel workbook, so on and so forth. This is the same content, just some quick shortcuts for it. So Excel workbook, Power BI data sets. So this is where you might, where it says create live connection to data sets in the Power BI service. This is where you pull down information to your local copy as opposed to pushing up data into the service. These data flows, this is more of an automated process, leveraging some other Microsoft services. Dataverse, you might eventually hear this word being thrown around when it comes to Microsoft. Dataverse is essentially a compilation of a lot of different data sources in the Microsoft online platform. It gives you kind of a templated version of that. As an example, is contact information. So person's name, phone number, address, so on and so forth. It kind of gives you that. But then you can start to expand it further into your own environments. SQL Server, just a direct connection to that SQL Server, and so on and so forth. What I did want to point out here is if I click on more, it gives you an idea of all of the current connected templates that you can use. So just going through this long list of items, you can pick from files. We're going to use the CSV file, but you can pull it from a PDF file as well too, so long as that PDF is fairly clean. I've always had trouble with that, some of the image information. SQL databases, some SAP, if anybody's familiar with that piece, and then some of these may look familiar, some of these maybe look new. I think the tip code data, I think that's oftentimes where I see like other visualization tool sets are tied in pretty well with this one. I think Tableau, and this one's a long time ago, but I think Tableau, I've used that to tie into a tip code data visualization. Power Platform, this is more of a Microsoft service. We won't necessarily get into that. Azure, if you're not familiar with, is Microsoft's version of like Amazon's cloud services or Google Cloud services. This is a pretty robust platform and has a lot of different components to it, but obviously they want to be able to leverage their own cloud platforms, so that's there. From an online services, these are just previously connected or established connected services. So Salesforce is an example, GitHub you may have seen prior, Google Analytics, a lot for web related content. So feel free to go through those later, but for now, I'm going to go through, and after I click on Get Data, I'm going to select, I will start over. I will click on Get Data, and you can import an entire Excel workbook. But I believe the files that are shared are CSV files. And one thing I'm going to showcase that may be a different version of the file that you have for location. I wanted to provide an example, but it's pretty easy to go and manipulate these files to have that same example. So when I click on import, my file shows this first row, Northwoods facility details. And then the second row are the essentially data types or headers of that content below. And then I also added an additional column here, but what you all might see is 4 columns with this location ID, building code, room capacity, so on and so forth. A couple of things to note here is, let's say you've got an email list that is separated by a semicolon. You have different types of delimiters similar to Excel. Additionally, it gives you data type detection. So what that means is what you might have, or your files have, location ID, building code, room, so on and so forth. So these are data types. If I were to choose a different option here, do not detect data types, it's going to act as though this item here is just an entry into that table. And then it uses only column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's kind of your headers. But we'll leave it as default for now. And I'm going to click on transform data. So before I load it into my workspace, I have the opportunity to kind of clean it up a little bit. And what that does is it loads up the Power Query editor. And we may have gone through this last session, but I'll just kind of revisit this. This ribbon here gives you a lot of options to be able to work with your content, manipulate some tables and rows and some data. Also, let's see if I can hide this real quick. So some of it may seem familiar in terms of Excel. So you've got this area here where you can start creating and working with functions. Your table sets here. And what I'm going to show you is how to remove this first column, or I'm sorry, this first row, and then add this second row as the headers. And if you've uploaded the your files, it may have already taken this row here as your default headers. But what you'll do is in this home section in the middle here, there's a remove rows. And of course, alternatively, there's keep rows, so you can select multiple rows to keep. But in clicking on that, you get a subset of menus. You can remove top rows, which we'll do here in a second, remove bottom rows, and remove alternate rows. So if you've ever worked with Excel files that the bottom rows might be just summaries or notes or just content that isn't necessarily related to this table, you can remove the bottom rows. Also the alternate rows. So if you have just kind of a stylized table where it skips every other row to input data, you could do that. You can remove duplicates. So after selecting a specific, let's say, building code here, if you wanted to remove duplicates based off of building code, this is the option to do that. Blank rows. So as an example here, under the details section, there's some blank items. It'll detect that and start to remove those items. But what I'm going to do again is remove the first row, which is just the title. And then by doing that, it's kind of cool because it asks how many rows you want to remove from the top. So you can remove multiple items here if your Excel files, run into any just kind of random notes or details about it. But I'm going to just type in 1, and it gives me just this cleaned up version of it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to want to use this top row as my header. So I'm going to click on use first row as headers. And not sure why that's hidden suddenly. But what you might be seeing here is the columns are displayed by now the data type. So location ID, building code, so on and so forth. What you might have noticed here too is in the functional space is some coding opportunities where you can change the type of field this is going to be, or type of column this is going to be. So in64 type is a number, text type, and if you had any other kind of defaulted, or however it may have detected these fields, it would display up there. All right, so now what I wanted to do is remove this details column. These are just random notes I placed in here, but what you can see is somebody may have said, I don't necessarily want to delete this in the Excel file, but I do want to at least take note of that this needs to be deleted. So what I'm going to do is select this row, and I'm going to click on remove rows. And then click on remove bottom rows, number of rows. I'm just going to select that, click OK, and now that's deleted. There's also a number of different ways to go about doing that, but this is kind of an example of how to do so. Replacing values. So what I did was I right-clicked, and then I've got some options here. Additionally, you've got the same options up top. So if I click on replace values, what this does, if you're familiar with the control find or control replace in Office products, what this does is it locates all items or all values that equal delete, and will replace it with whatever I input here, or additionally leave it blank. Kind of a cool feature, but at least here in the Power Query editor, it's cool, but at the same time, it might provide an opportunity for you to overwrite a lot of other areas where you may not want it to. So if I type in delete here, so it just identified that there was a word that said delete, and then replace it with delete here. And if I wanted to revert, let's say I did make a mistake and it replaced it multiple items, and if I wanted to revert back, generally Control Control Z is a cool shortcut to revert back, but it doesn't work here. Also, there isn't a undo feature that I saw, but what you do have on the right-hand side is the applied step. So it takes a history of all the things that you've done for this table. And you can jump back to view what you've done. So if I go back to this change type section, if you recall, I removed this top row, and by clicking on this, we'll display that information. So nothing is fully committed yet until we're gonna save the changes. So if I wanted to go back here to remove bottom row, if I want to take this as my last step, what I'll do is I'll just simply click on the X to undo my last step. Any questions on this so far?
Just one comment for me, not a question though, Dan. You did touch on something that's important for everybody to realize and may not, and that is the effect of this editing on the location.csv file that you pulled in. If you could discuss, you know, the you're not editing the file.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, so what I was doing was I was importing the file and the data into Power Query. So I'm not actually manipulating the original file. Also, I imported the data, but it's not stored into my workspace yet until I click on apply. So you don't necessarily have to worry too much about creating different versions of an Excel file because you're going to be manipulating it here. It just imports the information and then allows you to make those changes here. All right. One last piece is removing columns. So I wanted to remove this column here. So similar to removing rows, if you click on the drop down, it gives you remove the selected column or remove all of the other columns. So if, let's say you've selected multiple columns and you want to kind of clean up your table that way, those are your two options to do that. But for the time being, I'm going to leave this as is. I'm going to click on close and apply means it's going to close the Power Query editor, apply my changes, and then take me back to my workspace. And then it's going to load that information here, and then you can see that on the right. I'm going to continue on with the remaining files. Oh, actually, I think we're a little over our break. So when we get back from break, we're gonna finish up. I'm gonna continue to load these into my workspace. Feel free to do that, but yeah, we're gonna take a 20-minute break if that's okay, and then yeah, continue on with this piece.
Okay, so 10:40 cell phone time.
Yes.
East Coast time. Sorry, I'm on the East Coast. And
No worries.
so when we come back, if there's a way to load more than one file at a time, I couldn't figure out how to do it, Dan. So
Sure. Yeah, I can show that.
cool, because you may have 20 or 30. Okay, yep. Guys, 10:40 or 40 past the hour cell phone time. We'll reconvene.
All right, so I'm going to start jumping right into loading up the other files. So to answer your question, Don, you can upload multiple files. However, there needs to be a relationship prior with those files, because what will happen is it will take the CSV files and create one long table. It's so useful, but obviously if you're trying to create more of a relational type table set, unfortunately it's doing it one at a time. So if you go to get data, text files, and start loading these up. I'll continue to see if there's another way to do this, but I'm just going to kind of rip through these pretty quickly. And let me know if anybody needs me to pause or if you have any questions in doing this. Also, I suppose one way that you can do this is you can take each of those files, since they're a single sheet, and put it into a one Excel file as a workbook, and then upload the workbook instead. And that should identify each of those sheets as a single table. And if you find you need to delete anything from your current set, you can just click on the item, right click, delete, and it's going to remove it from your query. All right, so one of the items I wanted to showcase was creating custom columns. I was having trouble with doing it one way, but I'll show you kind of how to work around that. So what you have here is up top, there's an add column section, and you have a few different options to utilize, but you can create a column from examples. So if you select from selection, like, I'm sorry, I selected these two columns first, and then I clicked on column from examples, and then column from selection. It gives you a quick menu here. What you'll do is it's asking you to enter some sample data. So if you click on, if you double click on column 1 here on the right, what it's going to do is you can certainly add static information, like I'm just going to put my name here, and then what that will do is it'll try to take any sort of existing examples from these two selections that are checked and apply that all the way down. If, as you can see here too, it kind of gives you some previous options that you can select from. But these first two items listed here are from the columns that you've selected. What that means is if I wanted to provide a sample here of this column, I'll click on or type in 150 and then select that. And then if I wanted to combine that with the first building, I will do, let's see if it lets me. Come on. There, I'm sorry. After you type that in and select the item, hit enter so that it applies all of the values here to this new column. And then if I wanted to add anything further, I double click into that top level, type in first. Why is it not recognizing that? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just adding from existing. This is just adding existing columns. We're going to merge here in a second, but just wanted to show if you wanted to create a brand new column from any of this, you can. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click cancel, and I'm going to click on merge columns up here. So I selected these two. I'm going to click on merge columns. Why is that different experience? Sorry about that. Oh, sorry. Okay. To reiterate, you can click on merge columns. You can right click and select merge columns. No separators. I can include a colon, comma, or if I do, let's say, a dash. I'm gonna, the example here would be if different groups understand their data or code it slightly differently, meaning we've got building code and room number. What you might find sometimes is that the building code and room number combined are relevant information that you want to pull together. So you might have that ability in Excel through doing something like a concatenate, and this is kind of a similar experience. So what I'm going to call this is building and room. I'm going to click OK. It is going to hate me now. No, sorry, it did it automatically for me. Because I had previously selected the details list and the, I think it was the capacity. So it combined the two existing items that I had selected. So I'm going to undo this. I'm going to go to custom column. All right, I'm sorry, I'm going to try this one more time. Bear with me 1 second. There we go. I'm not sure why it didn't pop up, but so what I'm doing here is I'm taking building code. I added a dash, and then I took the room number, and then it just populates that field all the way down. I'll go through this one more time because I know it was a little bit convoluted. So then it adds or appends it to the end of my table. So again, I go to column from examples, and I want to select from all columns, so it gives me the opportunity to combine any of these. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select or double click into the first field to provide a sample. And I chose building code first, and then added a dash. And then again, not sure why I didn't populate or show these items here, but I'm going to type in 101 as an example and then press enter. And what it does is combines these two columns together into this area. And I should be able to change this to a different title. Any questions? Anybody having any trouble with this part?
Pretty slick auto magic.
Yeah, you'll probably run into a couple of different scenarios where you know, you've got some pretty raw data that you want to start compiling together. I find it easier to do it here than I do in Excel, because what you can do is if you just wanted to combine these two and then get rid of this, these two fields, you could do that again by going to or selecting those two and then remove those columns. But I'm going to leave it there for now. All right, so that was the only change I wanted to make currently. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on close and apply. So it's going to take my changes and start loading it, all those tables into this section here. What you might experience is it's just going to take you back to this empty workspace right now. But what you have is, if you click on the left-hand side, what you might notice is this little data table. So it kind of shows you, you know, that each table that you've selected, it gives you those data types listed below. But the really cool feature here is that it will try to automatically map your tables together in this ERD type format. I'm going to try to zoom out here a little bit to get a big snapshot. Does anybody not see this, or maybe a different experience?
I was looking away when you zoomed out.
Oh, sure.
What'd you do? What'd you do?
So
Oh,
in the
yeah,
bottom
little
right
slide
corner,
bar. Yeah, cool.
yeah, there's a little slide bar there. Also, if you press Control on your keyboard and then with your mouse, scrolling up and down will give you that same capability. So this is kind of cool because I believe you can take a snapshot of this and use that as well too to export the information. Let's see if I can. You can export to PDF. And it's going to lie in that, do that. Sorry, I'll show that later on. But so what we have here is, again, the tables that you have for each of those files that you uploaded, the data types. So what you might find is there is sometimes a discrepancy in the way that Power BI might read that. So you have to kind of work through creating relationships there. So I think, Don, you'd mentioned you worked through this and you ran into one specific table where it didn't pick up.
Yeah, I want to say, let me zoom back in so I can read it. The location code didn't pick up the relationship between maybe course section and location, and I had to draw manually. Yeah, because a course section has a loc ID. Each offering of Math 101, you know, has a location, and that did not come through automatically for me. I had to drag the location field from location over to course section, and it picked it up, but it didn't do it automatically.
Gotcha.
And the other
Okay.
one is that there is probably not really obvious when you first pull it up, but there's a hierarchical parent-child relationship in the faculty table. The chair is the FID of your department chairperson. And I had a heck of a time getting that modeled. I couldn't, I tried to drag chair to FID in the same table. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's something that Power BI can deal with or not.
Oh, gotcha. So chair FID. So let's I'll jump into this here in a second, but
I was gonna say
so
that
what we're
that's, don't let me derail you.
oh no, that's okay.
Weirdness.
That's actually that'll be a good segue to kind of review that data again if this doesn't work. Sorry, excuse me 1 second. Okay, so one of the examples that we want to go through here is just mapping the information out, and instead of having to type all of this stuff out, it gives you this cool graphical interface to be able to do that. So what Don was experiencing as an example is I want to create a relationship between the location table and the course section. So I'm just going to clean this up for myself, but however it might make sense for you. So what you can do is you can take the location ID field, and I'm going to click on it and drag it over to the location field in course section. And it will create that map for me. And if I hover over, as you can see, it'll highlight the fields that are connected. So one of the things we want to take a look at is faculty. And what you can do here is a couple different ways. Sorry, this is going to move this around. If you right click and select edit query, it will take you to the Power Query editor and then load up the faculty table. But of course, you can still see these others. So in reviewing this, we've got the faculty ID field, last, first name, so on and so forth. And the chair is
It's null if you are a chairperson, since you don't have a chairperson. Otherwise, FID 1 and 2, is it like Blaines and Blanchard, whatever, are the two that are Blanchard and Baines are the two professors that are chair people.
I see. Okay, so this is kind of a parent-child relationship. So
Roger.
yeah, gotcha. So Blanchard, John Blanchard, is a chair. For Jerry Williams, the chairperson is because it's John Blanchard. I don't particularly understand how that gets created. It's either you're a chairperson or not a chairperson.
And I don't know. There's only two people that are chair people, and that is it's a derived value. There's not a chairperson yes no column. But if it is null, they apparently don't have a chairperson. So like we use this data a SQL join, a self join, of a table. But I'm looking now that I look at it, what's line 8? Who is that? Theirs is null. They don't have a chair either.
Jane
Jane
Boston.
Boston. But yet she's no one's chairperson is number 8. So she is neither she's out of that relationship, out of that picture. She doesn't have a chairperson, but she is not a chairperson. Anyway, I'm pretty sure the professor I got this data from just wanted to model a parent child in a table join. So don't read too much into it.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So I'm going to close out of this. Not make any changes there. And we've got that relationship built, and we can start digging into creating some visuals from that. So this is kind of where we start doing a little bit of storytelling, or just kind of describing what kind of information that we want. So I'm going to start with the faculty because I did see salary listed there. So if I choose, what's kind of cool is before you pick any visuals and you start selecting this, it starts creating this table for you. So ID, first name, last name, and should go in the order that you select. That starts recreating that visual here. I'm going to select the rank and salary, and this should load up the location of that faculty member. Anybody have any questions on any of this? Any questions on what we're trying to accomplish here? And feel free to follow along, or if you've got some other thoughts and ideas, love to hear them, or you can certainly start creating kind of your own visuals and dashboarding here at this section.
Well, Dan, I would ask what kind of stuff can happen, or can you talk a minute for the importance of getting those relationships right in the, what do you call that? The relationship design view. What do you call that?
Mm-hmm.
That last thing. That
this model.
The model.
Yep.
There you go. The data model view. Yeah. What's the importance of getting that stuff right before you move on to visualizations?
Yeah. So take, for example, this is an entire classroom training curriculum. So if there isn't any relationship between, let's say, the course section and the course, if there's no relationship there, then trying to create a visual around or report around any of this will be broken. And so you may be missing data that is important and relevant to what you're trying to share. So this exercise is pretty important to go through first before you even start with the visuals. Of course, you can do that, but best practice is generally to make sure first your data is clean, second your relationships are there, so that it is easier to start to build your reporting. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself going back and forth. You might have to reload data. You might have to delete information that is irrelevant or maybe too sensitive for whatever features or reporting features that you want to include in your dashboards. Yeah, if you can think of any others, Don, feel free to chime in.
Nope, I call it for the automagic to work. When
Sure.
when you don't have things right, whether it's column names automatically populating as a legend on a graph, or the column names being meaningful, tends to that being populated correctly when you do a graph. And in this case, like you said, if you go to do a visual that pulls up the actual location ID or the actual name of the building or whatever, that won't do that. It just won't work. the magic won't happen for you if you don't do these preparatory steps, I guess.
Yeah, there's I throw around the word governance or maybe just some guidelines to building your data. It's important to keep a consistency around your naming schema. So for instance, like what you're describing here is if we had course ID, or I'm sorry, the course section, and we typed out the entire word faculty ID, and we've got in here just ID. We may run into an issue where, you know, is this ID specific to the location ID, or is this faculty, student ID, so on and so forth. So it helps to, with that consistency, it helps move forward fairly quickly without having to redo and reanalyze each field. So that's why that first cleaning up that data exercise was part of it, renaming columns, making sure there's consistencies around how you're uploading your content so that Power BI can pull this information automatically for you.
There you go.
So here I chose faculty. I chose the specific fields I wanted to include. You can certainly click on all of those, but we're gonna just keep it here just so that we can kind of see how each faculty member is, I'm sorry, I just undid that. All right. So this is selected. If I want to add another visualization, I'll click in anywhere in the white space here. And I'm going to select the simple clustered column chart. So it's going to give me kind of an empty template to work off of. And as you can see, all of this is empty or unselected, and then this is empty. So I'm going to start with the faculty ID. In general, what you want to do is you never really want to start with a person's name or a building name. When it comes to analytics and data, you generally start with an ID number. So in doing that, I'm going to select the ID number. First name, last name, kind of just keeping the same order that I've done here. So rank, and then salary. And so it gives me this stacked view. I'm not terribly happy with the way that this is showing the information because it doesn't paint a clear picture of what this means, other than you can see the person's salary. I believe if you click on this first one, and generally it's supposed to highlight this, but you can't really tell. So this is why you kind of get the opportunity to work with these pieces to see which one best fits. And you may already have an idea of, okay, I know that I want a pie chart or whatever the case may be, but I'm gonna select this instead. It should keep all of the items that I previously selected, and then it will show you the data associated. Also, what this stuff does for you is it starts to tell you a little bit of the story for you, meaning when you start to describe the information, let's say Blaine is the highest paid faculty member here compared to all the others. but from a percentage perspective, it starts to give you that data for you in this pie chart. How's this faring with everybody? I would love to see an example of what you might be coming up with. If anybody would like to share, that would be awesome. Otherwise, I may have to pick on somebody other than Don.
Other than me, because I did my homework, teacher.
I'm gonna roll the dice here. It's okay if you haven't done it, so I'm gonna start with Jasmine. Did you have an opportunity to get this?
No, I got behind at one point, so I have to go back and review the recording.
No worries. Anybody else might have any of this data loaded up?
Yeah, I have it, but I mean, I just did exactly what you were doing. I was clicking around on the different visualizations, and the pie chart seemed to be looking the best.
Gotcha. Okay, no problem. So what I'm gonna ask is, I do apologize. I have to stop here at in 15 minutes. So what I'm gonna ask is, what if you can all take the opportunity to put at least 3 visuals up that will display that data of faculty members, and of course, if you want to combine it with, let's say, the courses. And I can go through this pretty quickly in terms of combining those two, but if we can put up 3 visuals, and then the exercise essentially will be which 3 visuals did you pick, and what kind of data are you sharing? You don't necessarily have to go through an entire story about it, but if you wouldn't mind getting started on that. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go and show you how to combine another table. So I had mentioned course section. So I'm going to click into the white space here, and hitting the drop down, I'm going to select the course section ID first, faculty. Oh, sorry, this is what I was talking about. Don and I were talking about making sure that you understand and clean up your data. So I confused course section ID and course ID are 2 different areas. So they're kind of similarly named, but in either case, I will continue on. I'm just going to select all of these. And right now, we're just trying to get some raw data in there. We'll talk about how to make this look a little bit cleaner. All right, and then let's see what kind of information I want to share with faculty, and use that to combine. All right, so what I did was I wanted to see, or what I want to show is the faculty members, their course section, how many that are associated with them. So might make sense to start manipulating this data or moving some of this information around. So for instance, I want to take out the FID and I'll put that there. Gonna move course section into values. Actually, what I might do is that. This is where the exercise of trying to get the right visualization tied to the right data and relationships between the two so that you can kind of talk about what specific details you want to share. So let's see if there's a better way to show this instead of this tree map.
I thought I'd be slick and use a map visualization to show where the students are from, but they're all from Wisconsin. So I got a big blue splop of Wisconsin on there. Nothing to see here.
While you're doing that, yep, there you go.
Yeah, that's what I got.
All right, so back to this one. So I've got my faculty names at the bottom there, and then the values are let's see if we can do first names. These have to be numbers, so it's just counting the courses per faculty member. But it's a little, this example is a little weird because I've got course ID 1, 2, 3. Everybody's at 100%, meaning that everybody at least has a course associated with them that are listed here. And then the color schema is, let's say for course, this one here. So course ID 1, each faculty member has at least been associated with course ID 1. So if you wanted to say how many faculty members okay, it's not the cleanest. So this is where you might need to talk through this. So how many faculty members are associated with a course? And for this example, course ID 1. So if I click on this blue piece, it'll show me Harold Baines, one of my favorite baseball players. The information associated with the course section and details are listed here. For John, there's only one instance of that course associated. Kim, there seems to be 2 instances for the course, and the section information is listed here. So for course ID, there are 2 listed that are associated with Kim Cox. So the reason it may seem kind of sporadic and I'm kind of jumping back and forth is this is the reason why we ask a lot of questions up front about the data that we're trying to pull together so that we can kind of get a better understanding of what information we want to share. Meaning, again, here's some data given to you by somebody. I'd like to see, details about the faculty members. And oftentimes what you might find is that's as much information that they'll give you. So aside from getting that data, making sure it's clean, you start asking some more in-depth questions like, okay, what about these faculty members do you want? What information do you want to share or see? What kind of decisions are you going to make based off of, the information or reports that I'm going to piece together for you? Meaning I want to understand how many faculty members, the number of courses that are associated with the faculty members so that we can determine whether we can give, let's say, fill up more opportunities to take on courses, or, there's not enough students associated with the course because perhaps they don't like the faculty member, or perhaps because, there isn't enough sufficient times associated with those courses, so that's limited. Those are kind of examples of asking those questions and trying to compile that together into this visualization. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, certainly I can clarify in a different kind of way, but
well, while you're on that topic, Dan,
yeah.
A couple of the CAE folks help me out here, guys. Is it Jasmine, Leela, or y'all? You're kind of visualization designers, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
I personally am not doing that. I think we may be getting into that more, but yes, some people on our team do create visualizations in Demo. It's a similar tool to Power BI.
Hunter, you implement, but I thought some folks on your team were kind of like an intermediary requirements gatherer, designer sort of thing. Am I remembering something completely wrong?
I make visualizations specifically for the last project I was working on, and since I had experience there, I do it for Dog. Right now, recreating a Azure framework instead of Demo, and yeah, I do visualizations.
So what Dan's saying rings true to you as far as squeezing requirements out of people?
Yeah.
I can say that I've created reports that didn't make any sense. They look nice. But I earlier in my career, I've certainly run into situations where I've just compiled this onto a report. I was super proud of it. And then I showed it to a management team, and they pretty much looked at it and they're like, I don't understand anything of what you're piecing together, and I couldn't necessarily explain how any of this was connected. I just was like, oh, look, there's a cool pie chart. but try to explain what it meant. I had no idea. So there's also, and part of it was because I didn't necessarily understand what the data was and what it meant. It was just I don't know, you're giving me some tables here, so here's some visualizations, but again, like it was in relation to an oil and gas field and their well data associated with their pipelines, associated with their, what they really wanted to see is how many issues were brought up in relation to each well. But I had no idea what that data meant, and so it really failed miserably. But certainly lessons learned in terms of asking the right questions, digging in a little bit deeper as to what they're trying to accomplish and the information they're trying to pull.
Yeah, you absolutely have to have that goal written out, detailed, like what question are we trying to answer? And that's a big deal when putting these things together.
Yeah, and almost creating the title for the graph first thing and renaming it because, like, I mean, we would know what FIDF first, means, but, if you can create the title for your graph first thing, then you can have in your mind, what does the visualization look like or need to look like in order to tell that story.
Yeah, one of the examples that I was successful with, I was working I had a project with the city and county of Denver, and they had a lot of different assets out there, cameras, Wi-Fi devices out and just across the city. And they wanted to be able to identify what assets were located where. So we had a map, how old those devices were so that they can start to plan to replace any items, and then any issues regarding that specific area that pertain to multiple assets. So if there was a park that contained Wi-Fi devices and a few cameras, how many issues were associated with that specific park, and trying to tell the story of why there were so many issues with that specific area. Was it outdated assets? Was it, people who were going in and like beating up all of the equipment there? Was it just in a location? Were these assets just in locations that didn't necessarily provide the right coverage? So those were cool conversations to have, just in terms of what's around the city, the demographics around the city, is there a park, or is there a specific area that is surrounded by large buildings that interrupted Wi-Fi service, stuff like that. It was great conversations to have with executive teams and decision makers to start improving their strategies around, okay, we need to make sure that we touch each location and have kind of a recurring process to maintain, manage, and update those assets. So unfortunately, I am at time, but please feel free to continue on, of course. If you can all, again, just place in 3 to 4 visuals, and then certainly work amongst yourselves and share that. But when we touch base again next week, we'll kind of go over everybody's examples and what you came up with, if that's okay.
Yeah, for next time, Dan, if we could go into a little more detail on what those fields are under the visualizations, as far as like what goes in legend, what goes in value, what goes in, because that's where I start to get I think I kind of know what I want to do in Excel, but
Sure.
that's where I'd like to go next time. So guys, we're going to go ahead and break for the day. I would use this time to either goof around with Power BI and just like I do, professionally Google and get your 3 visualizations working and be ready for Tuesday morning. Or if you have previous assignments that are still not turned in, that you need to get caught up with and get those turned in. Either way, we will reconvene with more data visualization in Power BI. Oh, and there's a really good video. I had it's posted in the classroom under data visualization. Had a gentleman that runs a data visualization storytelling. He's like a psychologist named Bill Shander. Had him come into an hour lecture the last time we offered this course. And it's not tool specific at all. It's more about the philosophy of data storytelling and visualizations that tell the story. So you might, if you've got a chance, set that to running between now and Tuesday. It might add a little bit of context to what Dan is saying about deciding what you want to say before you draw it up in a tool. Otherwise, we'll reconvene Tuesday morning, 8:30 Central for the next session.